He was just a stand-in, and I was just the fool who loved her while she rehearsed for someone else. The lights above the stage burned golden, but I felt nothing. The applause was for the film, not for me, not for the one who bled quietly behind the scenes. Sophia stood beside me, smiling like she hadn't tried to rewrite my existence into someone else's ending. The premiere of Fragments of Him was live-streamed across the country, every lens pointed our way, every question about our vision, our journey, and our dream project. They had no idea I was never part of her dream. I was her mirror, her memory keeper, her replacement. I stared ahead, the cue card trembling slightly in my hand, not from nerves, but from restraint, because in my pocket wasn't a speech, it was a USB. The one she thought I never had the courage to use. But I had learned from her. From the way she stitched lies with light, from the way she replaced loyalty with legacy. "Sophia," I whispered, just loud enough that her painted smile twitched. "You used me like a script you never meant to publish." Her breath caught, and her eyes darted to the crowd, the cameras, the tightly choreographed moment unraveling. She didn't respond, she didn't need to. I already knew the truth. That every word she ever said to me was a rehearsal line spoken for someone else. And when the spotlight burned brightest, she chose Ryan. Ryan, the golden boy of cinema, the one with terminal charm and a terminal liver. Ryan, whose diagnosis was a tragedy, but not enough for Sophia. She needed an ending, a sacrifice. And I was conveniently born with a compatible blood type, a pliable heart, and enough silence to make me her perfect donor. Her stand-in, her tragic footnote. They asked her earlier what inspired the role of Liam, the dying star I played with every drop of real pain in my body. She laughed softly and said, "Joe." In's gaze reminded me of someone I used to know. She meant Ryan, she always meant Ryan. I should have walked off that stage right then. But I waited. Waited because pain needs timing, betrayal needs witnesses. The microphone in my hand was live. I could see the director nodding at me from the wings, trusting me to hit the beats. But I wasn't here for beats, I was here for endings. So I looked at the crowd, critics, influencers, old friends, vultures, and smiled. To everyone watching, I said, voice steady, "Thank you for coming to the premiere. This film is a labor of love, and pain, and substitution." Sophia's nails dug into her clutch. "I want to dedicate my performance," I continued, "to the man Sophia truly loved, the one she asked me to imitate in every scene, the one whose life was more valuable than mine in her eyes." "Ryan." Gasps, murmurs, someone dropped a drink. I didn't flinch. "And to Sophia," I added, turning to her slowly, "I forgive you for seeing me as a prop, because tonight I finally learned the one thing your love never taught me, where I end, and where you never really began." The silence that followed was heavier than the applause. I wasn't supposed to be on camera, I was just the guy who checked the lighting rig and read temp lines off camera so the real actors had something to react to. No one remembered the name of the stand-in, not even the director most days. But I remembered everything. The way Sophia first looked at me, not like someone she was impressed with, but someone she couldn't unsee. That flicker in her eyes didn't say, "You're talented," it said, "You remind me of someone." It was during the last scene of The Glass Sonata, a film Ryan had starred in just before he disappeared from the public eye due to health reasons. I was filling in for a wide shot they needed to frame, and she walked onto the set unannounced. Sophia, the executive producer, the force behind half the films that ever made it out of post. She wore beige heels that made no sound and a black coat with pearl buttons. She stood beside the camera monitor, arms crossed, silent. When the crew broke for lunch, I lingered, still holding the script marked with lighting notes and camera angles. That's when she approached me. "What's your name?" I blinked. "John?" She tilted her head. "John what?" "John Taylor." She stared at me for an uncomfortably long time, like she was looking through me, comparing something invisible behind my eyes. "You look familiar," she murmured, then added, "Can you act?" I laughed once, quiet and unsure. "I guess." That night, I found a call sheet in my locker with a new name listed under lead audition replacements, mine. I thought it was a prank. By morning, there was a contract on my email signed by Sophia Liu herself. I should have asked why. I didn't. I was too busy trying to believe I was being given a chance. The kind you don't question when you've spent years eating from craft service leftovers and sleeping in your car outside the lot. It didn't hit me until much later, when people online started comparing me to Ryan. The bone structure, the tone of voice, even the way I held a glass on camera. They said it was uncanny, that it had to be deliberate, that Sophia had found a ghost image of him. They weren't wrong. I was a shadow she cast on screen, shaped to her memory. But back then, I didn't see any of it. I remember one day on set, Sophia handed me a coffee and said, "Don't read too much into what people say. The only reason they see Ryan in you is because they miss him. That's not your fault." And I believed her. Because she said it while brushing lint off my jacket like she cared. Because she knew I hadn't slept the night before due to nerves and told me to rest between takes. Because she said things like, "You're more than you think you are, John." And for a guy who grew up with no one saying that, it felt real. There was a rooftop behind Studio C that no one used. I'd go there to breathe during long shoots, to escape the chatter. The air was always cold that high up, even in summer. On the second week of shooting Ember's End, I found Sophia up there already, standing dangerously close to the edge, staring at the skyline with her arms wrapped around herself. "You come here too?" she asked, without turning. I nodded, holding out my scarf when I saw her shiver. She took it without a word, wrapped it twice around her neck, and finally smiled. "Thank you, classmate," she said, echoing some memory I didn't share. Later I'd learn that was something Ryan used to say to her in college, a pet name, a timestamp, another reminder that I was just walking the path someone else had already carved. When we wrapped the third film, she offered me a contract that spanned 5 years, exclusivity. Her company would represent me, brand me, protect me. It felt like security. I signed it the same night. That was before I realized what security meant in her world, being boxed, branded, silenced, being offered roles that mirrored Ryan's legacy, not mine. Every award show, every campaign, every magazine shoot, she orchestrated it with a puppeteer's grace, crafting a version of me that wasn't mine to live in. I would have left earlier, but she always knew when to stop me. When I started asking questions, she'd tilt her head and say, "Are you really going to throw away everything you've worked for?" And then, softly, "Are you really going to leave me, John?" Like she needed me. Like I mattered. I don't know when it stopped feeling like admiration and started feeling like imprisonment. Maybe it was the day Ryan's name showed up again, rumors he was dying, that he needed a transplant, that there was someone in the industry with a matching blood type. I ignored the dots, until I couldn't. I remember walking into the hospital lobby after a routine checkup and seeing Sophia there with a doctor. She didn't notice me, but I saw the chart, saw my name, saw the words donor match and Ryan's profile right beside it. That night, Deborah texted me. Deborah never used to say much. She worked in production, quiet, competent, always tucked into oversized sweaters and sensible boots. She was the one who replaced my coffee when Sophia knocked it over without apology. The who once handed me my script when I forgot it, without a word. But that night, she wrote, "You know she's not doing this for you, right?" I didn't reply. Not because I didn't understand, but because I finally did. Deborah had always been there, in the background, saying little but seeing everything. She was the first one who looked at me and didn't see Ryan, she saw John. I'd catch her watching sometimes, when Sophia was giving me orders, when the crew laughed a little too hard at Sophia's jokes, when I stood on my mark pretending I belonged. Deborah was the only one who never asked me to perform off camera. Sometimes that's all you need to know what real is. That was when I started recording things. The private meetings, the conversations, the arguments. I bought hidden mics, cameras, not to hurt Sophia, just to survive her. Because even shadows eventually get tired of being cast. Sophia handed me the script like it was a trophy, gold embossed cover, heavy cream pages. "They want you for the lead," she said, like the whole world had been waiting for this moment. It's poetic, really. The story is inspired by Ryan. Of course it was. The script was titled, The Glass Fade, a story about a brilliant broken actor facing his mortality. Tragic, angelic, unfinished. It was Ryan, from the first monologue to the final line, and she wanted me to play him. I flipped through the pages, my fingers trembling without permission. The opening scene was set in a hospital bed, tubes, applause from a television in the background. The character's name wasn't even changed. Liam, Ryan's stage pseudonym before he became a household name. You don't see it, she asked, her voice soft, dangerous. How perfect you are for this. Perfect, not for the role, for her plan. I smiled. You really think I'm perfect, Sophia? She didn't notice the bite under my words. Instead, she cupped my face gently like she used to when she wanted me pliable. They'll see what I saw first. I should have walked out right then, but I didn't. Because I wanted to know how deep it went, because some part of me needed to stand in Ryan's ghost to burn it down from the inside. The next day, the announcement went live. Sophia Liu's company greenlights The Glass Fade, starring her protégé and rumored partner, John Taylor, in a role inspired by greatness. Comments exploded. Some were supportive, many were not. Why cast a nobody to play a legend? He's just her boy toy, another PR stunt to sell a dead man's story. I expected backlash. I didn't expect a thread on an anonymous forum to post screenshots of contracts, forged ones, showing that I had requested this project, that I had begged Sophia to play Ryan, that I had demanded to be styled like him. The leak was surgical, cruel, precise. I walked into her office with the thread open on my phone. Sophia didn't even look up. Don't worry, John, PR's working on it, it'll pass. You forged my request letter, I said. She blinked once. I polished your intentions. I laughed, short and breathless. You polished them into begging for a man's shadow. Sophia set down her glass, her voice sharp. You're getting everything you ever wanted. The lead role, the spotlight. This is how the game works. Grow up. I leaned against the desk, lowering my voice. You signed my dream away, and now you ask for my soul too? There was a silence between us then, heavy, real. I gave you everything, she said, quieter now. No, you gave Ryan everything. You just used my body to carry it. Sophia's eyes darkened. Don't start this again. This started the moment you saw him in me and never saw me again. She stood, circling behind me. You're spiraling. This is why people think you're unstable. Maybe you should take a break, let someone else step in for a while. That's when I saw it. She wasn't just rewriting my career, she was preparing a replacement for the replacement. You already have someone in mind, don't you? Sophia tilted her head. Everyone is replaceable, John. I turned to leave. She stopped me at the door. Oh, and about that necklace I gave you after your audition, she said, almost playfully. It wasn't mine, it was Ryan's. I thought it looked better on you. That's when it cracked. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a quiet, clean snap in my chest. I left the building without saying another word. Back at the apartment, I opened the old files I'd stored away, contracts, deleted emails, the ghosted calendar invites I'd been excluded from. And then I found it. A time-stamped recording, 2 years old, her voice and her lawyers, talking about containment plans in case I developed delusions of stardom. Plans that included blacklisting, reputation management, fabricated diva behavior. She had always planned for me to be disposable. I sat on the edge of the bed, the necklace still cold around my neck. I didn't take it off, I didn't scream, I just stared at the wall until the sun dipped behind it. That night, Deborah texted me again. I know you're not okay, you don't have to say anything, just come to the studio rooftop. I almost didn't go, but I did. Deborah sat with her legs curled under her, coat wrapped around her like armor. She handed me a thermos. It's not coffee, she said. You look like you need something real. I took a sip. Ginger tea, warm, honest. We didn't talk much. But she was the first person in months who didn't look at me like I owed her a performance. At some point I said, I think I was a script she never intended to finish. Deborah nodded. Some people love the story more than the character, and they'll burn the actor just to relive the feeling. I laughed bitterly. I don't even know who I am outside of her. You're still here, she said, eyes steady. That's more than I can say for a lot of people. The wind picked up, carrying the city's neon noise with it. She wants me to donate, I finally admitted. To Ryan. Deborah didn't blink. I figured. You think I'm a fool for even considering it? She shook her head. I think, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not play the part they wrote for you. I looked out over the city, the glowing skyline smeared like brushstrokes on black canvas. I used to want to be in the frame. Now I just wanted to be free of it. The hospital room smelled of bleach and artificial calm. White walls, white sheets, white light humming softly in the corner. It felt like a stage no one wanted to act on. I sat on the side of the bed, not because I was sick, but because Sophia insisted I get a full workup after I fainted on set. Exhaustion, she told the press. Overwork, he's a method actor, so committed. The doctor was careful with his words, but not careful enough. I heard the phrase routine crossmatch screening slip from the nurse's mouth. The clipboard in his hand had Ryan's file number referenced next to mine. It wasn't subtle anymore. She brought me sliced apples that afternoon, not because she loved me, but because my liver was compatible with Ryan's. She sat on the chair beside the window, the plate in her lap, peeling each slice into crescent moons. Her movements were delicate, almost maternal. She'd never done this before, never even boiled water while we lived under the same roof. Now she peeled fruit like a wife in mourning for a man who hadn't died yet. I added lemon, she said, holding the plate toward me, like a peace offering. I took it. Not because I forgave her, but because I wanted to see how far she'd go pretending. She talked about the movie next, how the final act would require reshoots, how the test audiences were responding well, how the character, based on Ryan, needed more softness, more vulnerability, the kind only you can deliver, she said. I nodded like I cared. She stayed a few hours, watching the snow fall outside the window in silence. Eventually, she said, "Do you remember the scarf?" I did, but I didn't answer. She placed the last slice of apple on the plate and stood. "You were kind to me when you didn't have to be." I didn't tell her that kindness wasn't something I rationed, that even now, even knowing what she'd done, I wasn't angry in the way she expected. I wasn't volatile, I wasn't theatrical, I was empty. That was worse. When she left, I lay down and stared at the ceiling until the shadows on it changed shapes. I pressed play on my phone, not music, not a film, but the recording of her voice 2 years ago, planning my containment strategy. Listening to her talk about me like a problem to be managed was strangely comforting. It reminded me that I wasn't crazy, that what I felt was real. I scrolled through old audition clips, stopping on one where I'd improvised a line she once said Ryan wrote. She had smiled when I delivered it, her eyes glassy. I thought it was pride. Now I knew it was memory. I closed the phone and let it fall to the floor. The snow kept falling outside. Somewhere, probably, Ryan was also watching it. Or perhaps he was in bed, calculating how many breaths he had left, wondering when Sophia would convince me to trade mine for his. I didn't sleep that night. When I returned home the next day, it was silent, the kind of silence that swallows up your breath, the kind that knows you're coming and waits with arms wide open. I moved through the apartment like a ghost, touching the back of the couch where she used to fall asleep scrolling through articles about Ryan. The hallway where our wedding photo once hung, now replaced with an abstract canvas, she said matched the tone of the room better. I went into the study and opened the drawer where I kept all my old scripts. The margins were still filled with notes, scribbles, highlights, a star by a line in one, even dying stars still burn until the end. I remember circling it after Sophia said it reminded her of Ryan. Everything reminded her of Ryan. I sat down and flipped through another. My name wasn't printed on the cover. It was Ryan's. She had given me his scripts, leftovers from the roles he'd declined, repurposed for me. It wasn't acting. It was shadow puppetry. And I had been so proud. That night I found the rooftop again. The same one where she first took the scarf I gave her. It was cold now. Bitter. I stood at the ledge and looked down, not with any desire to fall, but to remember that gravity still existed. The wind whipped through my coat. My fingers were stiff. My heart, quieter than usual. I heard the door creak behind me. It was Deborah. She didn't speak, just walked to the ledge and stood beside me, holding out a thermos like last time. Ginger tea again. I should have known the moment she said the script was written for me, I whispered, unsure if I was speaking to her or the wind. Deborah didn't interrupt. She brought me apples, peeled them, I said. I thought maybe that meant something. It did, Deborah said, her voice soft but steady. It meant she wanted something. I let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, a liver. Deborah turned to face me fully. You're allowed to hurt, you're allowed to grieve, just don't bleed for someone who only ever wanted your bones. I didn't cry, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't have any water left in me. Everything had already been given away. A few days later, Sophia sent me a message, a voice note. Her voice was calm, sweet, calculated. John, I don't want you to feel pressured, but Ryan, he doesn't have much time, and I know you've always wanted to do the right thing. You always say that, remember? Right over easy. That's your motto. Please just think about it. I'm here, I'll be with you, we'll do it together. I replayed that message 10 times. Not because I believed her, but because I needed to hear what desperation sounded like in her voice. It was faint, almost gentle, almost love, but not quite. Later that night, I took out a pen and started writing my own lines, not for a role, not for a scene, for truth, for myself. And in the quiet of that room, beneath a window frosting over with snow, I wrote my first line. She brought me sliced apples, not for love, but because my liver was compatible with Ryan's. The footage arrived anonymously, no message, no sender, just a USB left in a plain envelope slipped under my door. It was snowing again that morning, light, soft, deceptive. I almost missed the envelope when I stepped outside for air, almost ignored it entirely, but something told me not to. The video was time-stamped 2 days before the chandelier incident on set, the one Sophia claimed was an accident, the one that had landed me in the hospital with 3 fractured ribs and a hairline crack in my scapula. It was grainy but clear enough. Ryan's assistant, wearing a studio pass, adjusting the rig above the stage where I'd be giving the final speech. He glanced around nervously, climbed the ladder and did something with the bolts, fast, mechanical, practiced. Then he disappeared off screen. I replayed it, again and again, the same angle, the same screw being loosened. At the bottom of the frame, someone else entered, just briefly. Sophia. She didn't look at the camera, she didn't speak, she just handed the assistant something in an envelope and walked away. That was the moment everything changed. It wasn't grief that gripped me, not even betrayal, it was stillness, a calm that settled deep into my bones, the kind of clarity that only comes when there's nothing left to save. I transferred the video to my phone and walked into the rain without an umbrella. Sophia was at the editing suite, reviewing final color grading for the glass fade. She looked up when I entered, then quickly dismissed the room with a flick of her hand. They obeyed her like clockwork. "You look better," she said gently. "Healing suits you." "I saw the footage," I said. She blinked, once, twice, then reached for a bottle of water as if thirsty. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do." She didn't ask to see it, she didn't deny it, she just stared at the floor. "Was it your idea?" I asked. "Or his?" She exhaled slowly. "He was desperate. I didn't know it would fall that hard. But you knew it would fall." Silence. I sat down across from her, placing my phone on the table between us. "I could go public." "You won't," she said. "Why not?" Her lips trembled. "Because I still love you." I laughed once, quiet and cruel. "No, Sophia, you loved the version of me that looked good in your story. You loved a shadow. You loved convenience." Her eyes filled with tears. "They didn't fall." "I made mistakes," she whispered. "You made choices," I corrected. She stepped closer, her hand brushing mine. "John, I can fix this. We can fix this. Just give me something to believe in. Please." "And in return?" I asked. Her voice was barely audible. "Your liver. For Ryan. He doesn't have much time, but after this, after he's okay, I'll be with you, completely." I stared at her like she was a stranger who had borrowed someone else's face. "You want me to carve out my body so he can breathe and you can pretend you didn't kill me slowly for 3 years. Tears rolled down her cheeks now, real ones, but they came too late. She stepped back like she knew she'd lost something final. "I'll give you everything," she said. "Every contract, every right, every title. I'll even marry you again, properly, publicly. Just say yes." I stood, gently pushing her hand away. "If I'm a stepping stone for your ending," I said, voice even, "I'll choose where I fall." She froze. "You don't get to script my death and call it love." I turned and walked away, not fast, not slow, just enough for her to feel the absence. That night, Deborah met me in the editing room. I got it from a technician, she said, handing me a flash drive. They've been hiding all kinds of things. The files included raw voice memos, emails between Sophia and her board, even a pre-approved article drafted in advance to frame me as unstable and unwilling to support a humanitarian cause. There were even 2 internal pitches for brand campaigns. From villain to savior, the redemption of John Taylor. He saved a legend, now it's time you see the real hero. Deborah looked at me carefully. They were planning to sell your surgery like a redemption arc. I stared at the words until they stopped making sense. You were never the actor, she said gently. You were the product. I nodded, shoulders heavy but heart strangely light. Then it's time they saw what happens when the product speaks back. 2 days later, I filed for divorce. Sophia tried calling. Dozens of times, she sent flowers, letters, even a short clip of her crying, saying she was sorry, saying she would walk away from everything if I just picked up. I didn't. She sent Ryan to the hospital to intercept me. He was paler than I remembered, his cheeks sunken, lips cracked, he looked like a ghost clinging to a golden frame. I know you hate me, he said, but I never asked for this. No, I replied. You just accepted it. I'm dying. So am I said. Every day you two rewrote my life like it was a prop. He coughed into a napkin. It came back red. You won't get another shot, he said. I'm not aiming for one. I walked past him without looking back. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The sky outside my window was thick with clouds, but the snow never came. Just the soft echo of peace. The red carpet outside the Royal Lumiere Theatre was lined with reporters, camera flashes cutting through the dusk like static lightning. Inside, the Glassfade premiere was already trending on every platform. #Glassfade premiere, #John Taylor, performance, #Sophia Liu masterpiece. It was everything Sophia had built toward. Everything she was about to lose. I stood behind the curtain, stage left, earpiece humming. The producer whispered cues, prepping me for the introduction, the speech, the post-screening QA. My fingers tapped the small remote in my pocket. A single click, and it would all begin. On screen, the final scene faded to black. The lights came up. The audience erupted into applause. The MC stepped forward, grinning, microphone in hand. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the man who brought Liam to life, John Taylor. I walked out slowly. The applause thundered, but I didn't smile. I paused at center stage, taking the microphone, breathing in silence. Thank you, I said. Thank you all for coming tonight. I looked over the crowd. Sophia sat in the front row, dressed in flawless ivory, her eyes sharp but uncertain. She didn't know what version of me would speak tonight. She didn't know if she still had control. I've spent most of my life behind the curtain, I continued, a stand-in, a warm body, a matching silhouette. Some people chuckled lightly, thinking it was a joke. I was cast in this role because of who I resembled, not who I was. Murmurs now. Sophia shifted slightly in her seat. But tonight, I'd like to introduce you to someone you haven't met, me. With a flick of my thumb, the screen behind me blinked. The projector switched from Premiere graphics to security footage. The studio, a rig, a ladder. Sophia's assistant adjusting the chandelier. Gasps filled the air. The next clip played. Sophia's voice, captured by my hidden recorder from the editing sess. White days ago. He doesn't have to die, just enough of a scare, something to force him to say yes. Someone in the audience screamed. Reporters jumped from their seats. I could feel Sophia's panic like heat against my back. I turned to face the crowd. That's what I was to her, not a partner, not a husband, a performance, a signature on a surgical form. The video shifted again, email chains, campaign drafts titled, The Redemption of John Taylor, contracts with forged timestamps, her fingerprints across every page. This wasn't just about a role, I said. This was about a life being curated, sculpted, then discarded when it no longer served the story. The audience was stunned into silence. Sophia stood, pushing past people, trying to reach the stage. Stop this, she shouted. John, this isn't the place. It's the perfect place, I said, calm, because this is where you staged my final act. More voices rose now. Is this true? Was this all a lie? Did you try to kill him? Did you fake the contracts? Are you and Ryan still? The stage crew scrambled to cut the feed, but the live stream was already viral. Clips spreading like wildfire. A buzz went through the theater. People stood. Phones out. I stepped forward, toward Sophia, as she pushed through the press crowd below the stage. You ruined yourself, she hissed, her face flushed. I tried to give you everything. I leaned down, eyes steady. No. You tried to buy my body in exchange for the ending you wanted, and now you're just a director watching her cast walk off set. Suddenly, a sharp snap echoed above. The chandelier, again. Someone screamed. Instinct overrode reason. I leapt off the stage and grabbed Sophia by the wrist, yanking her away from the spotlight just as the massive crystal fixture crashed down where she stood seconds ago. Shards exploded across the stage like diamond shrapnel. The crowd went wild with screams, the theater went into lockdown. Security rushed in, reporters surrounded us. But in that moment, amid chaos, Sophia looked up at me with wide, wet eyes. Why? Why would you save me? I didn't answer right away. The stage lights flickered above us, dancing across broken glass. Because I'm not like you, I said finally. I still remember what love used to feel like. She reached for my hand. I stepped back. Cameras flashed again, dozens of them, catching her tears, my silence, the blood on my palm from shielding her. By midnight, every platform was flooded. Sophia Liu exposed by husband John Taylor in live sabotage scandal. Premiere ends in disaster. Hidden recordings, attempted murder, shattered careers. Sophia's empire collapses live on stage. John Taylor walks away a hero. I sat on the floor of the dressing room, blood drying on my sleeve. A paramedic offered to clean the cut. I waved them off. My phone buzzed endlessly. Deborah texted me once. The world saw you tonight, not the shadow, you. I stared at that message for a long time. Back on stage, cleanup crews swept glass off the floor. Reporters clamored outside the theater for a quote, a statement, a soundbite, but I gave them nothing. Because some endings don't need music, just silence. The hospital room smelled less sterile this time. The walls were pale blue, the lighting softer, and the beeping of machines more rhythmic than alarming. I woke to it like it was a lullaby I hadn't asked for. A faint ache pulsed through my shoulder where glass had cut deep. My ribs throbbed when I breathed too hard. But I was alive. Again. This time, for myself. The nurse smiled gently when I stirred. You've been asleep for 2 days, she said, adjusting my IV. You took the brunt of the chandelier, dislocated shoulder, 2 cracked ribs, some minor bleeding, but you'll make a full recovery. I nodded. Your wife's been waiting outside, she added, almost didn't leave your side. I turned my face toward the window. Let the light hit me instead of her presence. Sophia came in a few minutes later, holding a paper bag and a thermos. She didn't speak at first, just stood there, awkwardly, like a stranger visiting a patient she'd once wronged but couldn't remember how. I brought you ginger tea, she said. I looked at the cup but didn't reach for it. She set it down quietly. The press has calmed down. The studio issued a statement about the chandelier being a technical oversight. They're trying to contain it. Are they containing you too? I asked, without looking at her. She paused. My board voted me out yesterday. They're launching an investigation into forged contracts and bribery. Ryan's assistant already confessed. Ryan himself has gone quiet. I nodded once. Sophia stepped closer. I just want to say thank you for saving me. It was instinct, I said flatly. Not forgiveness. She winced. John, I know it's too late to undo everything. But maybe we can still fix something. There's nothing left to fix. But I already filed the divorce. She flinched like the word was a physical strike. I sent you the documents before the premiere, I added. You just didn't think I'd go through with it. I thought after everything, after you saved me, you still thought you had me. Sophia walked to the edge of the bed, her voice lower, almost trembling. John, I was wrong, about all of it, about you. I lost myself in trying to keep Ryan alive. I didn't realize I was killing the only person who ever truly saw me. I looked at her then, really looked, and saw someone I didn't love anymore, maybe never had. I saw ambition where affection should have been, memory where presence used to live. You saw me, she said again, stepping closer. And I know I failed you, but if we just started over, there is no over to start from. She reached out, tears finally welling. John, I'll give up everything, the company, the money, the public image. I just want to be yours again. You were never mine, I said quietly. You belonged to the idea of someone else. I was just the closest reflection. Silence settled between us, cold, final. I closed my eyes, letting her presence dissolve into the hum of machines and the snow starting to fall outside the window. By the time I was discharged, my divorce was finalized. My lawyer sent over the papers with a single line attached: "You're free." I didn't reply. Instead, I walked out of the hospital into soft winter light. Paparazzi waited near the gates, but they kept their distance now. Maybe they'd seen enough. Or maybe the headlines had already been replaced. A black sedan waited by the curb. Deborah was leaning against it, coat buttoned to her chin, scarf wrapped high. She gave me a soft nod as I approached. I was in the area, she said. I smiled faintly. Coincidence? Maybe. I slid into the passenger seat. We didn't talk much on the drive, just listened to the quiet. At a red light, she finally spoke. You're going to be okay, you know? I nodded. I know. You don't need to rush back into anything. I looked out the window at the blinking city, at the billboards already cycling new faces and new names. I got a call yesterday, I said, an indie director, Nolan Reyes. He saw my performance before the stream cut off, wants to cast me in his next project, lead role, no strings. Deborah smiled. He has taste. He asked if I was done being someone else's echo, and I told him I'm ready to speak in my own voice. We drove in silence the rest of the way. When I got home, the apartment was no longer mine. Sophia had moved out. Her perfume didn't linger, the furniture had been replaced, the framed photo on the entry table, the one where I stood beside her in a tux, smiling too earnestly, was gone. I stood in the empty living room and breathed in the stillness. It was the first time in years the silence didn't feel like punishment. I spent the next weeks quietly rebuilding. Scripts arrived, meetings were offered. People apologized, agents who had ghosted me, producers who once rolled their eyes. The industry was fickle, but this time, I wasn't chasing its affection. I knew what that cost. Nolan's script was different, raw, honest, no grand set pieces, no fake redemption, just a man trying to figure out where he began after years of being erased. I accepted the role. One afternoon, during rehearsal, Deborah came by with coffee. She didn't stay long, just smiled as she watched from a distance. I caught her reflection in the monitor and realized I didn't feel the need to explain anything to her. She already knew. The night before filming began, I stood on the same rooftop Sophia once called her sanctuary. Snow fell softly. Below, the city breathed in silence. I took out my phone. One last voice message had come in from an unknown number. I played it. John, I just needed you to know. I did love you. Maybe not the way I should have, but it was real, somewhere in between the lies, somewhere in between the roles. I deleted it. Without flinching. I stepped back from the ledge, smiling to myself. The next morning, as I walked into the studio, I passed by a press crew gathered outside for a different premiere. Sophia stood at the edge of it all, surrounded by flashes and hollow praise. Her eyes found mine through the crowd. She didn't call out. Not yet. But as I turned, walking toward my own set, I heard her voice, low, desperate, soft. John. I didn't stop, didn't turn around, didn't answer, because I didn't need to anymore. She once called me a stand-in, but the truth is, she was never the leading role in my life.